Welcome to the Campus Outreach Staffcast, a podcast produced by CO staff for CO staff. I am your host, John Elam, and with me is the Campus Outreach Serve Executive Director, Kent Bailey. Ready for another good conversation, Kent?
This is going to be a good one. I'm excited about it.
Great. Today we are welcoming two guests to the Staffcast, Andrew Harris and Neil Powell, who are joining us from the United Kingdom. Kent, please do us the favor of introducing Andrew and Neil to the Staffcast listeners.
I really have been looking forward to this, guys, because just the friendship that I've had with each of you for so long has just been such a joy. And so to get to just have some time with you is great, but then for other people to get to listen in on our conversation will just be a lot of fun. So thank you both for taking out some time today to be able to chat together.
Pleasure to be. It's great to be here.
Great. Well, people need to know who each of you are. And so if you just take a moment to just introduce yourself, kind of where you are and what you're doing, and then we'll roll from there.
I'll kick us off, Neil. We're both being very British and polite about this whole thing here. So,
Great.
It's great to be with you guys. So I have lived here in the UK with my wife, Jamie, for almost 6 years now. Jamie and I have been married for almost 13 years. We have 3 sons, and we have absolutely loved living here in a UK context, and been a great privilege and joy to continue serving with Campus Outreach here. So coming to you from Birmingham, which is about an hour and a half away from London, where Neil is currently. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good to be with you. As you know, my name is Neil Powell. I'm married to Jane. We've been married for 31 years. And for most of that time, nearly all of our married life, we've been living in the city of Birmingham, which is where I first ever met Kent, and where I got to know Andrew as he came over here to work with Campus Outreach. 2 children. Rufus is 18. He's just gone off to university or to college, and he's headed off to St. Andrews studying philosophy and theology. My other son is called Felix. He's with us here in London. He's 13. He's still at school. And I lived for most of my life, as I said, in Birmingham. But before moving up there to work on campus ministry with the equivalent of InterVarsity, my passion for students and student ministry really was born out of the fact that I came to faith. I was converted as a first year, as a freshman in London while I was studying business and banking. And within a year of coming to faith, I pretty much felt, why would I want to do anything else with my life but talk to people about Jesus? Mm-hmm. People who knew him as their Savior and Lord, people who as yet didn't know him. So I love anyone with a heart for campus ministry because I'm a product of student evangelism. I wouldn't be here on this call today if it wasn't for the fact that another student took a step of faith. And that's how the Lord led me on that journey, really of only 2 or 3 months to coming to know Jesus for myself.
Well, Neil, thank you for just taking us forward there into your testimony, because that really was going to be my next question, and just kind of how you came to faith. And so, Andrew, could you just as well share how you came to faith?
Yeah, that's great. So I grew up just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I share sentiment in terms of the classroom being okay, but much rather have been on a baseball field growing up. And so I did my best to pursue that. And so when I finally turned up to university at Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville, baseball was a big part of my life, and it's kind of what I was living for. And really after, I guess, a couple of years at university, I had grown up not in a Christian family. My parents would have taken me to church on Easter Sunday and Christmas. And so I definitely did not know the gospel. And really towards the end of my junior year, was growing more and more empty and dissatisfied with the life that I was living. And one of my best friends, he had become a Christian through the ministry of Campus Outreach. He was attending Berry College, and over a Thanksgiving break, we were playing ping pong in his basement. And I just asked him, I said, "Hey man, what are you doing after you graduate?" And all he said was, "I don't know. I need to see where God leads me." And I set my ping pong paddle down and I said, "Matt, what does that even mean? I have no idea what that really means. Like, are you for real?" And he just stopped right there. He shared the gospel with me for the first time. I never heard it that clearly before. Then he said, "Hey, can I just pay for you to come to this New Year's conference?" So I went along with him a month later, and it was the weirdest environment I'd ever stepped into. I'd never been around really any Christians in my life. But just through the course of that conference, just heard the gospel over and over and over. And on the last night, Sandy Wilson was preaching on Isaiah 6. And really, it was God's grace became irresistible to me in that moment. I just knew that I was a sinner separated from him and in desperate need of the blood of Christ. And so I just have a very clear memory of that moment being so transformational and powerful for me. And so my heart changed, everything changed pretty quickly for me in Nashville that night. So that was interesting. Going back to the baseball team, there was about 40 guys on our roster, and there was not another Christian on the team. And so to go back and to try to wrestle with this new identity and this new life in Christ was really challenging. And I guess the other part of this story that was really impactful for me was just there was, I guess, a CO staff guy had gotten word of what had happened with me at the New Year's conference. And so he met me that first week. Now, granted, I'd never really met this guy before. I'm a little skeptical of just this whole Christian community thing. And he was a former baseball player. He was kind of a real man's man, loved outdoors, just kind of a cool guy. He was easy to relate to. And he said, "Hey, can I show you something?" I said, "Yeah, I guess so." And he said, "Come over to my house." So I go over to his house and he says, "I want to show you something here back in my bedroom." And so I'm becoming even more skeptical. And I walk in and he's got the baseball roster printed out next to his bed where he sleeps. And he said, "Every night I've been praying that God would save somebody on this roster." And he said, "You're that answer to my prayer."
Wow.
And I mean, I was just talk about a lesson in power of prayer. Kind of from day one, I just couldn't believe it. And really, I can't say enough about Drew. I mean, he gave his life to disciple me for the next few years, taught me how to study the Bible, connected me to a local church, taught me how to pray, taught me how to share my faith. I mean, it was deeply impactful. Yeah, those were some wonderful times just there at university when God got a hold of my heart.
That is awesome. Well, Neil, you already touched on something that I want to come back to, which is for each of you, and I've had the privilege of knowing you both for quite some time, you both have been leading and laboring for years, very fruitfully and with great longevity, great perseverance. So I'd like for each of you to go back to, when did the idea of ministry, the Great Commission, taking the gospel to others, go from just an idea to, no, this is what I'm going to give my life to? And then what has enabled you to persevere in leadership through years? There obviously have been challenges and difficulties, but what for you have been sort of the critical longevity elements that enabled you to just continue walking with God and leading in the very fruitful way that each of you have done that? So Neil, could you start us and kind of go back to what you were saying earlier of that first year, and then kind of just how that became very personal to you?
Yeah, thank you, Kent. My journey to faith was, as I said, really a relatively short one, just a couple of months, from something of a church-going background, but I had no idea what the gospel was or why Good Friday was a Good Friday. But I just had Christian friends around me who shared life with me, who loved me, who pointed me to Christ by their actions and their words, and were able to take me to those who could give me a better understanding of who this Jesus was. And for them, that was getting me along with them to church. So those people who God used in my life now, I'm still friends with them. And I value their friendship. One of them was my best man. He then, when we planted a church, helped me through my own Bible college training, helping to pay for some of that. And we've remained extremely close to this day. So I just had an example set before me of godly young men and women who were real about their faith and serious. Now, actually, neither of those two individuals that God used have gone on into what we might call full-time ministry. They've both labored in their places of work and in their local churches, but I didn't follow them into ministry. But they were there for me and became examples. And just having older students around you who modeled that Christian life, I think, was undoubtedly hugely formative. And the sense of being, whether we like to use the language of called or set apart, or in some way having this overwhelming conviction that this was something I needed to give the rest of my life to, was something that I think was God's decision for me, if you like. I didn't seek Christian ministry, but I was just compelled by the gospel and the reality, that reality of heaven and hell, and the reality that Christ would be willing to give his life to spare me from a fate that is worse than death, has been a constant thought in my heart and in my mind. And whenever as I have from season to season, found ministry harder work, or I've just been tired, or at the end of a long season of pouring out life into the lives of others, it is the knowledge that Christ is at work in me and through me, that it's his work that I want to point people to. His love for me is what compels me in turn to keep in the game, if you like. So I've never thought for a moment that I wouldn't continue in one way or another in Christian ministry, but it's being upheld by good Christian friends around me, loving church family, an amazing wife who sacrificed so much to enable me to serve in this way. But essentially at the heart of it all is knowing Christ. And it's never been a problem for me to say to live is Christ, to die is gain. It's just seemed so simple.
Amen.
Which is not to say that others should go into full-time ministry. I just think that is the way in which the Lord has called me to serve him. And I've loved every minute of it. Wouldn't change a thing apart from my own failings and weaknesses.
That's great. Andrew, how about for you?
Yeah, I think looking back, there's, two really pivotal moments that I could probably point to. I think the first one was just recently after I became a Christian. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing back in the locker room trying to explain my new faith to my friends. But these guys that I just genuinely loved and would consider some of my closest friends, I just had such a burden for them to know this God who changed my life. And so as I started to fumble forward and share my faith, and again, helped tremendously by the staff guy who was walking alongside me, just started to see these guys congregate around God's word and start to look into it for themselves. And then, to my amazement, God started to get a hold of their hearts as well. And so I got this front row seat to, not only has my own life changed, but I couldn't believe, it was electrifying to me to see like, wow, like the gospel is powerful even for these guys as well. And I just remember thinking, I walked out of the locker room one night thinking, this is incredible. Like, I wish I could just do this forever. I had no idea that you could even do that. And so I was pretty pumped to find out that full-time ministry was even a concept. So that was exciting, I guess, first and foremost. So I think maybe in that moment, just feeling like I would love to give my life in this way. But also at that time, I just was captivated by stories of others who were going to the nations. And so I remember reading Hudson Taylor's Spiritual Secret. I tucked it inside my accounting book in my accounting class. I was so bored of accounting, but I was so excited to read about what this man all these years ago was doing in China. And same thing for Adoniram Judson and others. And I started to become intrigued, like, wow, there's a need to take the gospel and to go with the gospel. And that summer, shortly after I became a Christian, a few summers later, I should say, I had the opportunity to go with Campus Outreach on a cross-cultural project to Penang, Malaysia, and got to spend, a summer basically in a context where there was such a tremendous gospel need. And those two things kind of combined. I mean, I remember just being in Malaysia that summer thinking, this is absolutely what I want to be about. I want to be about giving the gospel away. And I think I want to go. I think I want to go to Southeast Asia specifically, which maybe I'll get to share a little bit more. Eventually I was able to, and that was a great joy. So I think as all this time has unfolded and been in full-time ministry, and now I've been in kind of multiple, I guess, international contexts, I think just I've benefited so much from good leadership and have just come to really value the role of leaders. And I see the need for leaders in the local church and in campus ministry, and have loved just being able to lead and to serve and to work in that way through our ministry. And so sometimes it feels like, I just got started. I'm like starting to get gray hair now. You can't see on the screen here, but like, man, I feel like I'm just getting going here. But it's been a great joy to get to serve. So it doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Well, thank you for the example that both of you have set for a lot of us of just following the Lord, walking with the Lord, and serving Him so fruitfully. Just it's been awesome to watch. And Neil, specifically, I'd like to dive into a bit of the backstory for you when 10 or so years ago when we first met. And I remember you graciously invited me over for lunch after church on Sunday there in Birmingham. And you began to explain about what God was doing there and the plan, the Birmingham 2020 plan to see 20 churches planted. And I was like, nobody does this. This is incredible. And then that you began to explain, even at that point, just a few years into that initiative, that God was actually doing it and all that actually came to fruition. So I know we could spend a whole podcast on just that story, but I'd love to hear you share why that initiative even came into being and then what ultimately happened. Just where did that come from? What was the vision and the need to see 20 churches planted in a city in the space of 10 years? Tell us more about that.
Thank you, Ken. A privilege to talk about this because I feel about every step in ministry, it has not been my idea, but very much the Lord's leading. And I don't know quite why He put this on my heart, but I'm confident that the origins of this were His. We started a church in 1999. I became an accidental, and I still say a reluctant church planter. I was involved with campus ministry. We were seeing people come to faith in exactly the way Andrew has described, and that matched in many ways my own story. It was fruitful times on campuses in the UK. And we were not only seeing them come to faith, but then trying to disciple them on the campus. Mm-hmm. But there was a lack really of Bible teaching, gospel-centered churches serious about making disciples and raising up leaders around the university, within walking distance, shall we say, of the campus, which in the UK matters because students typically don't have cars. So some place that they can go and be discipled and find their way, many of them, into long-term service at home or abroad. And so I started a church with two friends, and we had no idea what we were doing. We were not trained to do this. People didn't typically plant churches back in that day from more reformed backgrounds like our own. But we started, and God gave the growth. And before we knew it, we had sort of 50 or 60 students regularly at our church. And I thought we need to do this again. And we planted a daughter church, and about 35 from our church went off to do that just a couple of miles down the road. So we'd gotten something of a vision for planting through our college ministry. We thought we're raising up young men and young women ready to serve and share their lives with the people of this city. Birmingham is about 1.1 million. It's the UK's second city. It's about 2.5 million in the larger metro area. So there was great gospel need all over the city. So I think we'd already had a vision for planting and a vision maybe even for planting daughter churches, that sort of thing, maybe every 3 years or something. But as you looked at the city of 1 million, it became clear, wow, if we're to ever impact a whole city for Christ, we're going to have to come together as evangelical churches in this city. We're going to have to determine to do more together than we could do on our own. So the 2020 Birmingham Initiative, as you say, was really a 10-year project between 2010 and 2020 to work towards the establishment of 20 new churches within the city. And we didn't know where those churches would come from, but we thought if we give it a name, 2020 Birmingham, and we'll have a clear vision and a plan and get people praying for it, we'll raise up some of those leaders to plant churches, and God will bring some of those leaders across our paths that we would never have known or expected. And that's exactly what happened. So we were both planting, and I was working with another good gospel-centered, disciple-making planting church in the city. We were planting churches out of our congregations, but we just found people coming to us saying, I'd love to reach people here. So we helped an Ethiopian taxi driver start a church. We helped a Mexican asylum seeker start a church. We helped a Romanian pastor who wanted to come from Romania to the UK to reach Eastern Europeans. He got in touch with us from Romania and said, I've seen your website, and I want to reach Eastern Europeans in the UK, because they were coming in increasing numbers and still are into our cities. And so God surprised us with where some of these folk came from. And we said to them, as we met each of these planters, look, we can't plant churches for you. They're your churches to plant and to lead, but we want to resource, pray, see if we can connect you with people who want to give financially to church planting in the city. We want to help you in any way we can to plant and grow a healthy gospel church. And I think the Lord honored that commitment to partner with other churches and across denominations. And he chose to bless because he could see the way we were trying to honor him and that desire to put aside some of our secondary issues, the matters of conscience, important as they were to us. We would put them to one side to see a greater number of gospel churches planted in the city than we ever could if we just worked on our own. Just to say, in case people are curious, we did get to that 20 churches within the 10-year window, and the project continues. Having gone past the year 2020, it's now called the Birmingham Collective. And that desire to plant a greater number of churches within the city. We felt 20 was really just the beginning. And I praise the Lord that work continues on in Birmingham.
Well, Neil, as you're sharing there, you're again touching on something that I wanted us to talk about, and I'd like for both of you to talk about it. And that is the connection between campus ministry and church planting. And we've said over and over again that in terms of the transition of students who are involved in a vibrant campus ministry, like campus outreach there in the locations where you are, it's a very natural transition for them to then participate in a church plant because it feels like the ministry that they were having on the campus. Evangelism is a high value. There's a strong sense of committed community among a core group. Prayer is so vital. Just these things that have been their lifeblood are really the lifeblood of these church plants where they are. Neil, I'd love for you to speak to how you have seen or would like to see that connection between campus ministry and church planting continue to grow. Andrew, I'd love for you to speak towards your vision for that, both in the UK and even beyond.
I think you're absolutely right, Ken. There is a natural synergy and opportunity for those who maybe come to faith or are really discipled and find that this passion to share Christ with others that Andrew and I have described from our own testimonies, to identify those students within our campus ministry and to really work with them towards a vision for taking the gospel when they mature and leave campus, taking the gospel out into their communities, and church planting being a key means of evangelizing those folk around our communities. I had come to faith as a student. I became an evangelist on my campus because I just wanted to talk to anyone and everyone about Jesus. I was like the Samaritan woman, I want to tell you about someone who's changed my life. And I was meeting up with students of all faiths and no faiths, some of them quite hostile to my Christian convictions. But I sort of, through those experiences of sharing Christ on campus, developed, I think, as an evangelist, as an apologist, and as an advocate for the Christian faith. I even started to be able to give talks as part of our Christian group on campus from the Bible and really cut my teeth. And I think university or college ministry is a great place to be to raise up leaders who are equipped to reach that next generation. So, if you can reach 18 to 21-year-olds on your campus for Christ and minister the gospel effectively to them, then God is preparing you for 20, 30 years or more of service in the local church as you effectively are equipped and enabled to reach that next generation. So what we did in our church was we basically made it easy for people to make that transition from college campus ministry to church ministry by doing an apprenticeship or an internship program for 1 or 2 years. And that gave them a chance to do further theological study, to see how churches function and work, to be discipled by a senior leader on staff, to really test their calling and their gifting, their character and their aptitude really for further ministry. And we said to people, look, there's no pressure on you. Come and serve the church for a year. And you may find at the end of that year that longer term Christian service isn't for you. Or you may find as that year goes on that you want to stay and do the second year. And then that second year is really about then confirming the rightness of given, the person that you are, the character that you have, the gifts that God has given you. Long-term service in the church might just be for you. So we developed this 2-year program within the local church as a way of enabling those who were really fruitful on campus ministry to test the waters. And it just made a smooth and relatively easy transition into church life. And from there, we could then start to talk with them about opportunities of church planting and so on within the city.
Andrew, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really the story of what God was doing through the local church that compelled us to move to Birmingham, honestly. I mean, and, Neil, when we first met back in 2018, I was captivated, just like Kent was articulating earlier, by the vision that the local church leaders in Birmingham had. And Kent, you say it all the time. It's like campus outreach. We're not really church starters. We're church strengtheners. And so to come alongside the local church in what God was already doing was really exciting. And now that I've been here for almost 6 years, I think as we think about the vision for the campus ministry, we love to think of Birmingham in particular as just an incredible mission field. I mean, the university campus here is an incredible place to be sharing Christ. I mean, I'd love to share some of the statistics at some point, but just, the world has come to Birmingham, and it's such an opportunity to get to share the gospel here on the campus. But then, as students respond to the gospel and as they're brought into the local church, our local churches here really are gospel centered and collaborative and creative and close knit and missional. And so as excited as I am about Birmingham as a mission field, Neil, I'll steal your phrase here, I'm equally excited about the mission force that could come out of this city and through university ministry by the means of our local church. And that, to me, was worth moving across the pond for.
And we are so thankful, Andrew, for your presence in the city of Birmingham.
Amen.
Andrew, I want to go back to one thing you touched on briefly, which was your story of your journey on staff. You told us a lot about your student experience, but then just your process of deciding to come on staff, your experience in Asia, and then your transition to the UK to regional director there in Birmingham. We'd just love to hear that process, God's faithfulness in the midst of it, and your answering the call through all that also.
Yeah, it's great. I'll attempt to make a long story somewhat short in all of that. But yeah, I came on staff in 2010. So after I graduated, I came on staff with CO Augusta and was sent to Georgia Southern University, which was a wonderful, exciting place to be. I mean, as I was sharing earlier, coming to Christ kind of late in my college years, those early years on staff really gave me a chance to grow and develop a lot. But that burden to want to go to the nations was burning bright that whole time, and really just kind of knew that I wanted to end up somewhere in Southeast Asia. And so we were praying. I got married to my wife, Jamie, about a year after coming on staff. And both of us were really praying for an open door, an opportunity to get to serve in Southeast Asia. And so it was around 2013 that the opportunity to be a part of the campus outreach work in the Philippines came to us. And we'd been praying for so long for an open door and an opportunity that when we were approached, so I'm not recommending this as like a model for anybody to follow, but when we were approached about the Philippines, we literally prayed about it for one day. And then we said, yes, we are ready to go. And so, yeah, we were so excited. So we moved to the Philippines in 2014. Hudson, my oldest, was a 1-year-old. And man, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And it was thrilling. It was exciting. And my role in this in particular, I was, the equivalent of like a lead team leader. And so there was a few staff that came with us, and Chris Drinkard, him and his wife, Carrie, and their family had been over there a little before us, about 6 months before. And Chris was really leading the work there, but I got the opportunity and the privilege to get to lead the campus team. And it is impossible to summarize all that happened in those years, but it was 3 years. We were in the Philippines. We had 2 more children, so in 2016 and 2017. And in the life of the ministry, got to see and be a part of just the establishment of a campus outreach, local church partnership, which was a great joy. got to participate in pioneering campus ministry, which was incredible. Got to see students come to Christ and even start to see some of the very first Filipino staff take steps towards working with CO. And I would just say it was some of the sweetest times of our life. I mean, it was so exciting. I was getting to do what I loved. God was blessing it. And really, I just can't say enough about the Drinkard family and how incredible Chris and Carrie were as leaders and how much they poured into us. And so those were the highlights. The flip side of this, or maybe you should say the other side, was we never suffered so much as we did during those 3 years. The sickness that we endured, maybe just the normal kind of sadness and challenges of cross-cultural ministry were definitely upon us. But really the biggest feature was my youngest son, Dietrich. So when Dietrich was born in 2017, we were just expecting him to arrive without any complications or anything different. We weren't told that there'd be anything different about D. And when he arrived and he was born, we were surprised to find out that he was born with Down syndrome. And that was, it's hard to describe just how that flipped our world upside down. Kind of to my shame, I'd never known a special needs person in my life, totally oblivious to that world, that community. So all of a sudden, here we are, and we had just committed to stay in the Philippines for another 8 years and to lead the ministry there and to carry on what we were doing. And now we have Dietrich and major questions around his future and what this means. And, I think one of the biggest things from back then that I look back on was I was so concentrated on what I was doing. And I think what God was doing in my own heart was kind of exposing me to the idol of, what I do is not more important than who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think had to really wrestle with that, with like, wow, I love this job. I love this work. But for the sake of my marriage and my children, I don't know if we can stay here for a lot of factors. There was just some additional medical complications. And so, yeah, we left the Philippines in 2017. And I'll be honest, we were heartbroken. We were a little bit traumatized. We kind of crawled back to Augusta, just feeling like, wow, God, what are you doing? I mean, we wanted to be here, and yet you've given us Dietrich, who we love and cherish, but we were just very kind of broken and confused. And I think just during that time, it's funny, as Neil, as you're telling the story and I'm kind of piecing things together, it's just amazing the like multiple stories that are sort of running parallel that eventually collide. I mean, it was in Augusta, we were kind of went through a lot of counseling. First Pres Augusta really helped be the hands and feet of Christ that put us back together so much so as a family. And we kind of, after about a year back in the US, felt like, gosh, we love what we do with campus outreach. We would give anything to continue doing the work, but we might just need a new location where we could care for our family, and Dietrich's needs in particular. And that's when Kent said, hey, I know a guy in England, and there's a pretty cool story going on there. You should come check it out. And so that's kind of the beginning of how we got connected to Neil and how the visit in 2018 came to be.
I'd love to just double click right there for just a second, Andrew. What was it in that season with a special needs child that enabled you to say, no, we're going to continue to labor in this fashion? You could have taken other tracks, and those would have been equally God glorifying and wonderful, but there was something that said in your heart, no, we want to keep doing what we're doing, even with the additional opportunity to do that with a special needs child. Can you just tell us just a little bit more there?
Yeah. Sometimes I wish that maybe I had a more profound answer to give to that question. I mean, in the moment, I think one of the things Jamie and I always reflected on was like the idea of a special needs child always brought so much like anxiety and fear and uncertainty to us. But then when we just were with Dietrich, it was just D, like he was, that stuff went out the window. It was like, well, we're just his parents and
just love him. That's right.
Yeah. And we just love him. And I'm not really, of course I'm thinking about those other things, but I don't really wake up every day, and we haven't woken up every day thinking like, oh gosh, like we're so burdened because we're special needs parents. Now there are challenges, like it does bring its own additional set of things, but I think we just wake up every day and feel like this is our family and this is our crew. And to us, the vision behind what we were living our lives for, and even just the ways that we were already able to participate in that and be a part of it, just felt like that's exciting. That's worth it. And there could be opportunities to do that in a place where, under God, we really do feel like we can care for all the needs of our family and still get to do this work. And so I never would have traded in that island in the Pacific for this one that I'm on now back then. But it is really sweet that the Lord opened up this door and gave us this chapter to get to continue laboring and serving in this way.
Well, Andrew, thank you for your example there and for just so clearly personalizing, even demystifying that area and just walking by faith there. And I've mentioned to you before, that was something in the early days of Campus Outreach that happened with Curtis and Kathy Tanner. And there had not been a child born to any of the staff at that point until their daughter, Kristen, who was born with Down syndrome. And it was just, for many of us, opened up a whole new world and new understanding of God and how he works in the world. And you all are doing that now. And so thank you for your model in that it's more far reaching than perhaps you're aware. And I'm just very, very grateful for that. So thank you.
This has been just part one of our conversation with Andrew Harris and Neil Powell. Stay tuned and catch part two in the next week. Make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting service to get each new upcoming episode. The Campus Outreach Staffcast is a production of Campus Outreach Serve. The vision of Campus Outreach is to glorify God by building laborers on the campus for the lost world. To learn more, visit www.campusoutreach.org.